Most people think boarding denial only happens to careless travelers. That belief gets people quietly stopped every single day in 2026. I've watched calm, polite, fully paid passengers get pulled aside at the gate and told they wouldn't be flying, while everyone else boarded around them. No argument, no warning, just one sentence that ended their trip. What makes this scary is that most of them thought they had done everything right, and technically, they had. These denials don't come from obvious mistakes. They come from things people assume are safe. Small habits, normal behavior, things airlines never clearly explain. Stay until the end, because the final reason catches even frequent flyers off guard, and it's the one you can't fix at the gate. If you travel even a few times a year, this matters. And if you want calm, practical airport advice, most travelers only learn the hard way. Subscribe to Fly Smart now. Let's begin. Reason 11. Ticket name mismatch. Most travelers assume small name differences don't matter. A missing middle name, one extra letter, a shortened first name. I've watched passengers confidently say, "This never mattered before," while standing at the counter. In 2026, that logic no longer protects you. Automated identity systems now flag even minor mismatches, especially on international routes. Once flagged, the issue becomes a manual decision. And manual does not mean guarantee. I personally watched a man denied boarding because his ticket listed a nickname instead of his legal first name. He had flown dozens of times before. He was calm. He was polite. None of that mattered. The system did not see a perfect match, and staff would not override it. The denial felt quiet and final. Name mismatches are treated as identity uncertainty, not inconvenience. Airlines and border systems are no longer flexible at the gate. Fixing a name on the same day is often impossible. That's why checking your ticket name against your passport before arriving at the airport is critical. If it doesn't match exactly, fix it early or risk being stopped without warning. Reason 10. Passport damage you think is minor. Many travelers underestimate passport damage. They assume damage only counts if pages are torn or missing. In reality, minor wear causes major problems in 2026. Loose covers, water ripples, faded photo edges, bent corners, or slightly peeling laminate can all trigger scanning failures. I once watched a traveler confidently present a passport that had survived a washing machine years earlier. He said he'd flown with it many times. That history no longer mattered. Modern passport scanners are strict. If a document fails automated scanning, staff must decide whether to allow travel. Most choose caution. The denial doesn't feel dramatic. It's framed as risk refusal. I've seen travelers stunned when told their passport is not reliable enough, even though it looks fine to them. The problem isn't appearance, it's machine readability. If staff cannot trust the scan, they often deny boarding rather than risk complications later. If your passport looks questionable in any way, replace it before travel. In 2026, mostly fine is no longer good enough to protect your trip. Reason 9. Seat switching before takeoff. Seat switching feels harmless to many travelers, especially when a plane looks half empty. I've seen passengers casually sit in a different seat during boarding, assuming no one will care. In 2026, this behavior is treated very differently. Seat assignments are digitally tied to passenger tracking, weight balance, and security accountability. When someone sits in the wrong seat, it creates a mismatch in the system. I watched a woman denied boarding because she moved seats before boarding finished, trying to sit with her husband. She wasn't sneaking. She wasn't arguing. She simply assumed it was allowed. Staff didn't see kindness or convenience. They saw unauthorized movement. Once flagged, she was pulled aside. Boarding continued. Her flight did not. Even temporary seat changes can raise concern, especially before takeoff. Airlines now prioritize predictability. Any deviation creates friction. If you want to change seats, ask and wait for approval. Never assume empty seats equal permission. The plane may look relaxed, but the systems tracking it are not. In 2026, staying in your assigned seat until told otherwise protects you far more than people realize. Reason 8. Repacking your bag at the gate. Many travelers repack bags at the gate without thinking twice. Moving items between a carry-on and personal bag feels practical, especially when overhead space looks limited. I've watched boarding stop entirely because of this behavior. In 2026, last-minute repacking signals uncertainty. It changes bag compliance, exposes items not previously screened, and disrupts boarding flow. Gate agents are trained to watch for this. I once saw a traveler denied boarding because his bag became oversized after repacking, even though it passed security earlier. The system did not care about intention, it only saw non-compliance. Repacking also raises questions about why items are being moved at the last moment. That alone can trigger additional screening. Once boarding begins, time becomes critical. Delays caused by repacking can push a passenger past the boarding cutoff. The safest move is simple. Pack correctly before reaching the gate. Once boarding starts, do not open bags unless staff instructs you to. What feels like a small adjustment can quietly turn into a denied boarding decision without warning. Reason 7. Immigration answers that sound rehearsed. This reason surprises many travelers. I've watched passengers denied boarding not because their answers were wrong, but because they sounded unnatural. Overly polished responses, excessive detail, or perfectly rehearsed explanations can raise concern. In 2026, alignment matters more than memorization. I've seen travelers give long explanations for simple trips and short answers for complex ones. That inconsistency draws attention. Border and airline staff are trained to listen for tone, pacing, and confidence level. When answers sound practiced rather than natural, they trigger deeper questioning. Deeper questioning takes time. Time is what causes boarding denial. The traveler isn't accused of lying. They simply miss the boarding window while verification continues. I once watched a man explain his vacation plan in extreme detail. The staff member stopped him and asked again, more slowly. That second check delayed him just long enough to miss boarding. The safest approach is simple. Answer calmly. Answer honestly. Don't over-explain. Let your answers match your document. Natural behavior reduces friction more effectively than perfect wording in 2026. Reason 6. Overconfident or challenging tone with staff. Tone matters more than people realize. I've seen polite travelers help through serious problems and confident travelers denied boarding for minor ones. Statements like "I fly all the time," "This never mattered before," or "You can't deny me" often backfire. In 2026, staff discretion plays a larger role when systems flag uncertainty. Challenging tone increases perceived risk. I once watched a traveler tell a gate agent, "You're overreacting." The agent didn't argue. She simply stopped assisting him. The conversation ended his trip. Airlines now prioritize cooperation and predictability. Calm compliance lowers attention. Resistance raises it immediately. This isn't about power, it's about risk management. Staff are trained to avoid escalating situations. If someone appears dismissive or confrontational, denial becomes the safest option. Even subtle frustration can shift an interaction. Slow speech, neutral tone, short response. These small choices protect you. The goal isn't to agree with everything. It's to move through the system smoothly. In 2026, how you speak can matter as much as what you present. Reason 5. Boarding out of your assigned group. Many passengers believe boarding groups are flexible. They aren't anymore. In 2026, boarding order is treated as a behavioral signal. Boarding too early shows disregard for instructions. Boarding too late risks auto-closing your record. I've watched a passenger denied boarding simply because he repeatedly stepped forward before his group was called. He wasn't rude, he was just impatient. Staff warned him once. The second time, he was flagged. By the time the issue was addressed, boarding had closed. His seat flew empty. Boarding systems now track attempts, not just success. Repeated early boarding attempts are logged. Late boarding can also trigger issues if gates close automatically. The safest approach is exact compliance. Board when your group is called, not earlier, not later. This isn't about punishment. It's about maintaining predictable flow. Airlines prioritize order because order reduces risk. Following instructions precisely protects you. If you want fewer problems at the gate, treat boarding groups as firm rules, not suggestion, especially in busy airports. If you're realizing how much airports silently evaluate behavior now, this is exactly why FlySmart exists. Subscribe if you want calm, clear explanation that help you avoid these problems before they start. Reason 4. Carrying items for someone else. This mistake still happens more often than people admit. "I'm just holding this for a friend. It's my cousin's bag." I've watched travelers denied boarding simply because they admitted they didn't know what was inside an item they carry. In 2026, responsibility equals risk. If you cannot confidently explain an item, staff cannot allow it. Even temporary possession matters. I once saw a woman carry a jacket for someone else. When asked about it, she hesitated. That hesitation triggered screening. Screening took time. Boarding closed. She stayed behind. Airlines and security no longer separate ownership from responsibility. If it's on you, it's yours. That includes bags, envelopes, electronics, and packages. Never carry items you didn't pack yourself. Even helping someone for a moment can create problems. This rule feels harsh, but it's consistent. The system values certainty above kindness. Protect yourself by only carrying what you fully understand. In 2026, uncertainty is treated as risk, not innocence. Reason 3. Payment or booking irregularity. Booking issues are quieter than people expect. Third-party sites, split payments, last-minute changes, unusual routes, or partial refunds can all trigger system review. I once watched a traveler denied boarding because his ticket was flagged for payment verification, even though his card had already been charged. The issue wasn't fraud, it was unresolved uncertainty. Airlines now rely heavily on automated fraud detection. If something doesn't align perfectly, staff may not have authority to clear it quickly. While verification happens, boarding continues. Once boarding closes, the decision becomes final. Clean bookings matter more than saving a few dollars. Direct purchases, single payment methods, and minimal changes reduce risk. Many travelers never realize this is why they were denied. The explanation is vague. The result is real. In 2026, complexity equals friction. The simpler your booking history, the smoother your boarding experience will be. Avoid unnecessary changes whenever possible. Reason 2. Emotional stress misread as risk. This is one of the most uncomfortable realities. Nervousness, shaking hands, pacing, raised voices, or visible overwhelm can be misinterpreted. I've watched elderly travelers pulled aside simply because they appeared stressed. They weren't dangerous, they were anxious. In 2026, emotional state is part of risk assessment. Once secondary screening begins, time becomes the enemy. Even if nothing is wrong, delays often lead to missed boarding windows. I've seen travelers cleared after review, but too late to board. Slow movements, calm breathing, and minimal explanations matter more than people think. Staff are trained to assess behavior under pressure. Appearing overwhelmed increases scrutiny. This isn't fair, but it's real. The calmer you appear, the smoother the process becomes. Preparing mentally matters as much as preparing documents. Ground yourself. Move deliberately. Speak slowly. These small behaviors protect your timeline. In modern airports, calm is not just comfort, it's strategy. Reason 1, staff discretion. This is the reason no one likes to talk about. Even with perfect documents, staff can deny boarding based on overall assessment, not as punishment, not as judgment, as risk management. I've personally seen travelers with valid passports, correct tickets, and calm behavior denied because something didn't align. That explanation feels vague because it is. Staff discretion exists to prevent uncertain outcomes. When multiple small concerns stack together, denial becomes the safest option. This is the final layer of modern airport decision-making. The good news is that discretion rarely activates on its own. It's usually the result of accumulated signal. Name mismatch, behavior, timing, tone, stress. When you reduce friction everywhere else, discretion rarely works against you. This is why awareness matters. Once you understand how airports think, you stop triggering invisible problems. In 2026, successful travel isn't about knowing rules. It's about moving predictably through the system. Airports no longer just check documents. They observe patterns. Once you understand that, everything changes. This isn't about fear. It's about awareness. If this video helped you see travel differently, subscribe to FlySmart. We focus on the things airports never clearly explain.